Hello, everybody. Yay! It's nice to be back. Welcome back, or welcome in if this is your very first time. Hi. Go ahead and make yourself at home. Welcome to the, lounge. We will get started with class here in just a second. I will talk a little bit about who I am and why I'm doing this. And then we will get into the meat of Samhain. So welcome in. Hello, everybody. Yay! Oh my God. Yay! Go look at all the ghosts in chat. Old farts in chat. That's what's up. I can smell you from here with all the love in the world. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. Yes. Hope everybody is doing well. Happy Samhain. Happy Halloween. Happy Day of Reckoning for, witches and pagans. We are coming to you live from Seattle, Washington. There are ghosts even here in the room who you may or may not hear in the background occasionally. I know I said no live classes, but maybe a couple people. If you have taken classes with me before, you know that we like to start on time. So we will get started here in just a second. Let me go ahead and do all of the preamble stuff. And, if you're watching this later, you just pause it. While I'm rambling on, feel free to go grab yourself a beverage, grab a snack, tuck in, light a candle, light some incense, make it good for you. But as I say in every class, you know how you study best. So, if that's with me rambling in the background while you're folding laundry or cooking dinner or whatever, make it good for yourself. Tuck in. Hi, Sarah. Yay. Nice to see you. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. I am Megan Angus. I am a millennia old eclectic witch. And I really love talking about witchcraft, paganism, and magic and stuff. If you know, you know. And I have been offering these classes for folks in the Seattle, Puget Sound area, ancestral Duwamish territory since 2015. And they have been available for free here on YouTube since 2020 when the panini hit, the worldwide panini, as my offering to community to help get us through some wild times. And hey, the hits keep coming. Turns out the wild times are here to stay. So, so we continue to do this here. That's what's up. These classes are loosely about the Wheel of the Year for pagans, witches, heathens, and other polytheists and, the curious. And we definitely do talk a lot about paganism, witchcraft, and the modern and ancient traditions, but we talk about what everybody else is doing around the planet as well. In this class, we are going to go through a brief rundown of a whole lot of stuff. And then over the next several weeks, we will get even further into the granular elements of a lot of the things that we introduced tonight in my weekly podcast. Well, semi-weekly, however often I decide to do it, actually, called Spinning the Wheel, which you can find on all podcast platforms around the world. So enjoy that. Join me for that. All of this is free thanks to, or at the behest of, or the responsibility of, my totally unhinged patrons. You all, I don't know. I don't know. You have been through the highs and the lows of this stuff with me, and it's been really amazing. Thank you so much for your support. The patrons are the ones that are responsible for this, so if you're also like, who is this lady and why does she insist on putting her content out, blame them. They are the ones who enable me. If you love this class, if you love the weekly podcast, you can head to my website and throw a buck in the tip jar as a way of saying thanks. You can always subscribe to Patreon if you'd like to financially support this work. And also, give it a like, give it a rating, follow us here on YouTube, follow me on the places. You know, do the things, make the robots happy. Click with the algorithm stuff. They love that shit. So, oh yeah, by the way, I will be cussing in this class. So, you know, you buys your ticket, you take the ride. What else? I don't specifically have any upcoming classes, but I will be offering some year ahead readings through my website for 2025 to into 2026. Stuff is on the horizon, and I don't want to say any more about it than that. Sign up for my newsletter, sign up for free to Patreon, follow me on the places that you can follow me, and you'll find out about it when it happens. And last but not least, I'm like looking at all my notes of like what I wrote down before that was like, you better say this. I have a threadless store where you can grab Sabbat holiday cards, as well as altar tapestries and some journals and a couple of other things. Check those out. Currently, all of the designs are featuring exclusive artwork from the world famous tattoo artist Jessica Henry. Hey, thanks for subscribing, Holly. Oh my god, I just got that notification. Oh my god, it's happening. It's in real time. Wow, that was crazy. Side note, that's Jessica in the background telling me to fuck off. So that's the kind of support that I have here when I'm doing this for you. Okay, that's what's up. That's the wall I'm up against. Okay, that's everything. All right, let's get into this. So let's just do this, shall we? Here we are. Welcome to the Wheel of the Year. I guaranteed there was some other stuff I was supposed to say there. I'll remember in like 25 minutes. It'll be really weird. This wheel that we show with every class was designed by my very good friend and longtime cohort, Ryan Allred. You can find him on the web under Ryan Jack Allred. Send that guy some energy. He's going through it right now. Just trust me. That's all I'm going to say about that. And these wheels are provided for you. If you're watching this, feel free to take screenshots. Give me credit. But feel free to take screenshots and use this stuff in your practice over the next 6 to 8 weeks. This is just a basic image for you to meditate on as we move through this season. And I really like working with the wheel as an image of itself, aside from it being this set of archetypes or ideas, because it really helps me see the flow of time and the flow of the seasons and stuff. So I love having these. All right. So here is our Sabbat sign that we are working with. These are, this is a part of a set of 8 symbols that I have found in my studies over the years. I talk about this every year. I still have not figured out who originally came up with this artwork. I am relatively certain that this is from a set of symbols created in the last 100 years. I think maybe even the last 50 to 75 years. But they are here for us to work with. And there is, this symbol makes me think of a lot of different things. The weaving of the tapestry, which is something that we talk a lot about as a symbol to work with throughout the wheel year. And it also, in that, makes me think of death shrouds and the cloth that is woven to cover and carry the dead, which we will be talking about a lot this evening. So, what are we doing here in Samhain season? As modern witches, pagans, heathens, et al., Norse folk, etc., we are working with ideas like death and transition, the Underworld Journey, ancestors and shadow work, purification and protection, and the celebration of life, as well as rebirth through death. When we move through this part of the wheel, what we are watching is the natural world beginning to break down. And this is the beginning of a process that's going to take several months. So there is the initial element of, sort of witnessing the natural order fall apart. these plants have been producing food. Not only do they stop producing food, they start to die and wither. Our animal livestock have been out there in the fields romping about. Now they're all coming home again, and it's potentially time to butcher some of them, depending on the culture that we're in. As well, we're watching the sun get lower and lower in the sky every single day, and with it, it is taking the heat and the light, and the natural world is responding to that. As well, our natural physiology is responding to that. And as we get less and less sunlight every day, our brain is, or our physiology is producing less and less serotonin. And so every day we are sort of losing the will to live. It's no big deal. It'll be fine. But no pressure. But this is happening for us. And this has been happening with our species and all of the other species on this planet for who knows how long. Millions of years? Probably. Because it's really about the tilt of our planet, and where we are in our orbit around the sun. That's what's up. So, this whole mechanism, comes into play, and it completely changes life on Earth. And it is a change that is totally outside of our control. It's totally outside of our influence. Even now with, weather control and all of that, like, whatever, man. Like, good luck. So, in our spiritual symbolism that we're working with, the sun is dying. And the daylight is growing shorter and shorter every single day from summer solstice into winter solstice. And as we pass through the portion of the wheel covered by Samhain, we come into the darkest 6 weeks. These are the 6 to 8 weeks of the year where the sun is at its lowest and gets to its very, very lowest point at winter solstice, where it will rise and set at the same point, very, very far south, for those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, on each of the horizons, eastern, western horizon. It will rise and set very far south, barely come up over into the sky, and then whoop, it's right back down again. And we get very, very little light. Big 3-day thing. There's like a 3-day thing is like a thing in some religions. There's like, yeah, I don't know. I'll come up with it. But something that our ancient ancestors, our incredibly smart scientist ancient ancestors, were paying attention to and making note of, and saying to themselves and each other, this seems like a big deal. We should probably pay attention to this and jot it down, mention it to Gary later. So one of the things that we're witnessing is this breakdown of the natural order. Another thing that we are witnessing in this time period is just transformation at large. Even the systems that don't altogether stop or go into hibernation change. They change the way they look. They change the way that they move. We see animals, the color of their fur will literally change, etc., etc. So there is this emphasis on undoing things. There's this emphasis on the breaking down of systems, and an emphasis on systems transforming and changing. And a lot of this stuff is wrapped up in entities and ideas like the wild hunt. The wild hunt is described as a bunch of different things. The Wotan's army, the family of Harlequin, the Raid, the She, the Slough of the Dead, the Furious Host. That's one of my favorite titles. Don't steal that. And it is made up of a variety of different entities, depending on the culture that we're talking about, and the time period that we're talking about. And so you can have this collection of entities, the wild hunt, appearing as surreal, phantasmagoric, absurd, bizarre, dreamlike, weird, and, it maybe is beings that you've never seen before, with parts that you've never seen before, and they're shambling along. all the way up to, again, depending on the culture and the time period, a collection of entities that are quite horrific, and ghastly looking. Um, People who have died by their own hand, people who died in war or murders, and others, and they look ghastly. They look horrific in this procession. And this group of entities is often led by uh, great gods and great goddesses, again, depending on the culture, depending on the time period, and or entities that we loosely might refer to as the Fae or fairies, aka elementals, aka sort of the spirit of the place, the spirit of the season, the spirit of the times. And all of these entities really are just, I don't want to say just, all of these entities really are personifications of this breakdown energy that is coming in, this chaotic energy that is beginning to override the natural systems of things. Nearly all of our solar gods have already died or are dying at this time of year. Many of them will be reborn at winter solstice 6 to 8 weeks from now. So this is truly that process. This is especially true for any of the deities that we're working with that might be described as masculine or mask-leaning. Versus a lot of our polygendered deities or goddesses, the deities that are femme or femme-leaning, they are often going through underworld journeys. It's very rare that we will see goddesses or polygendered beings actually die and be resurrected. They usually go through a really profound transformation, and or they will go through an underworld journey and then come back again. Um, but uh, but um, but god deities oftentimes actually die off. In fact, we see many of them dying off all the way back during Mabon, and their bodies are literally chopped up and scattered into the fields. No big deal. But man, that old time religion, huh? Anyways, um, so so again, the types of deities that we are hanging out with are the Furious Host, Wotan's army, the Wild Hunt. It's these entities that are here to represent these chaotic forces, as well as help us make the transition into this time of the year where we're going to be surrounded by a lot of these entities. Um, we're talking about people like Kor, who of course is Persephone with her underworld journey, with her mother Demeter, and the god Hades. But we're also talking about Hades, aka Pluto. We're talking about Inanna and Ishtar with their underworld journeys. But of course, we're also talking about Ereshkigal, her twin sister, who kills her, or holds her down. She is one of the few goddesses that, in some versions of her myth of the descent of Inanna / the descent of Ishtar, is actually killed and sits there for 3 days before she comes back up to the overworld. Um, this is the angel Azrael. Um, Let me see if I've got a picture of Azrael here. I think I do. Don't look at that. Don't look at that. No, maybe I don't. Wait, I do. Hey, there we go. Azrael, aka Thanatos. Baron Zamedi. Hecate. The list goes on. These deities oversee this portion of the year. We see deities like Kali have her puja or her holy festival at this time of year. And they walk us through this transition. They help us move through this idea of letting go of the overworld life and making the adjustments and transformations that we need to go through so that we can walk in this shadowy realm. Okay. So how do we observe this stuff? Well, through a lot of different things. There's our furious host. There we go. See, I was yapping the whole time. I knew I had a picture. I love this image so much. This is a an Italian artist. I want to say the 1600s, 1500s. I have like the actual description of it up on my website on the Samhain page if you want to hear more about it. But to me, this is just such a grand depiction of the furious host or the wild hunt or Wotan's army or whatever, where you see like it's phantasmagoric, it's a little macabre. There's like the wheat fields or the grain fields billowing in the wind behind them. Good times, good times. Again, that old time religion, right? That's what I'm talking about. So how are we observing this stuff? Well, by honoring our dead. That's one of the big ways. Propitiation is a big way that we honor this stuff, that we do this work. And giving over of sacrifice, giving over of offerings, and sacrifice can look like a lot of different stuff. It can be of our time, of our energy, attention, right? We often, I think, sacrifice to the wrong gods in this world, namely like the god that is our screen that's in our hand oftentimes is the one that we're worshiping the most. But these propitiations were intended to buy off the most harsh forms of chaos and push back the most intense pieces of that work. Another way that we do it is we slow down a little bit and we acknowledge the transformation that we are going through. We take time to actually see the shift that we are that's taking place in us, and the fact that we are also going to go on our own personal underworld journeys. And so any kind of a practice, any kind of a spiritual practice, philosophical practice that encourages us to go inward and deal with the murkiest parts of ourselves and do a little alchemy around that stuff is going to be exceptionally helpful at this time of year. I say this in every class. I want to make sure that I say it right now since it has approached and is telling me say it right now. If there are devils to be met in the underworld journey, surely they will come from your own heart. Samhain season is a time of reckoning internally, more so than it is a time of reckoning externally. And, you know, for those who work with me, you know the leftist rant is coming at some point. Well, here it is. It's been a year of destruction in Palestine, of total annihilation and Holocaust. There's no other word that we can possibly use. Genocide. There's no other word. But this is not the only place where horror runs unchecked on planet Earth. We live in a time of monsters, truly, at this point. And much of why there is such a blatant showing of this is because the forces that are in power, the people that are in power, believe that they run unchecked. They believe that they are allowed to do whatever they want to do and to destroy anything and everything in their pursuit of their petty, short-sighted goals. But the wheel turns. And the wheel turns. And collectively, this can be an incredible time period at this portion of the wheel for us to look internally at the shadows in ourselves that are utilized against us. The things that we can come to reckon with internally, we then can turn and reckon with externally in the world. So the work that we do at this time of year is very holy for ourselves as individuals, but it's also vitally important for the work that is taking place on Earth in the here and now. Being in alignment with the biology or the biorhythms really helps with this work, because a lot of this work is about death. It's about ego death. It's about killing off of old forms of self. And that's super not fun. That's stuff that nobody wants to get involved with. We might talk about liking it or wanting to fucking do that work, but we generally don't actually want to do that work. And the parts of us go kicking and screaming when that stuff happens. And what we see in the external world is just the macro version of what we're experiencing internally. These systems are outdated and outmoded, and they have to go. These beliefs, these attitudes, these behaviors are outmoded and have to go. Or, the alternative is not super great. So the biology or the biorhythms of this time period, I keep saying biology, but I mean the biorhythms of this time period are really here to assist us with that kind of work of letting things go and dying off or killing off the parts of us that just are not healthy and we can't take them forward into the future. Okay. I'm trying to rein it in a little bit and be somewhat vague, but motherfucking free Palestine, free fucking Sudan, free the Congo, free Syria, stop bombing Lebanon. All right, I'll move on now. Okay. So, in the Underworld Journey, this is the stuff that we're wrangling with. And it truly is, because even though it seems like maybe I just took a hard left and wanged out into, wild ass world events, why is she bringing that up? Because it threads back into the shadowiest parts of ourselves, of the things that we don't want to reconcile within ourselves, the things that we see could change, but oh God, that's going to take so much work. That's the stuff that will plague us. That is the stuff that will haunt us in the night. And later in life, at other times, we will think to ourselves, I coulda, I shoulda, I woulda, but we didn't. And so yearly, we get this reminder during this holiday season of, hey, how's the plumbing? How's that situation? Let's go into the funky parts and make sure that everything is healthy in these places, or as healthy as can be, and what needs to be rectified here. Okay. It is tough work. It is exhausting work. And I want to acknowledge that. And so that's a big part of why there is purification and protection listed as some of the witches' work that we do during Samhain, because this sort of self-examination and this excising of these pieces, it's surgical. Remember, part of, and we'll talk about this more as we move through, part of Samhain season is moving through Scorpio. Scorpio's ancient planetary ruler, Mars. Modern planetary ruler, Pluto. Pluto is about underground fire and underground power, but Mars is surgical. Mars is about cutting and inflammation and sharp things. And so we're going into places that are sick in us. We're going into places that are unhealthy in us, and we're digging it out. Again, the yearly reminder that we get to do this, have to do it, get to do it. Choose your vocabulary. But it is also important that we acknowledge to ourselves that this is exhausting work. We cannot just hammer at it every single day. Thank God time is a spiral. So I am coming back to my work here over and over and over again, but I'm not dwelling here forever and ever and ever. Big difference there. Important differentiation there. But this is the stuff that's bubbling up from the bottom of the cauldron. If you work with me, I like to say that phrase a lot. That's really what's up, is that it's bubbling up from the bottom of the cauldron. What's down there, it's making its way to the surface right now to be rectified. Okay. So how do we do this, right? How do we work through this? Here's some other names. Let me come back to this briefly. This gives us some clues on how we do this. It's New Year. It's Third Harvest. It's Blood Harvest. It's Devil's Night. It's Spirit Night. It's Day of the Banshee. It's the Feast of Sarah Dwinabelly. For some witches, this is a resetting time. For some pagan traditions, Samhain, October 31st, November 1st, is the New Year's marker. And so there is a rectifying in the sense of, I'm starting my process over again. I'm reinitiating my work here, my connection to these ideas, et cetera, et cetera. But also we have all of these harvests, the third harvest, the blood harvest. These connect back to um, the string of harvest festivals that we are in right now, starting at Lunasa, that's our first harvest, the grain harvest. Mabon, or fall equinox, second harvest, and here at Samhain, blood harvest, or third harvest. Why blood harvest at Lunasa? As I just said, it's grains. Mabon, it is fruits, veg, and nuts. And here at Samhain, it is blood, because at this point, all of the crops have been pulled in. If you are an agrarian society, you now have a sense of exactly how much food you have to get you, your people, and all of your livestock through all the way until next year's harvest festival, or harvest season in, late summer. And so what livestock is going to live and what livestock is going to be sacrificed, because maybe there isn't enough food to feed them through winter, or we need this meat to get us through, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that's graphic for the vegans. I apologize, but it's history. It's history. I'm not saying that you have to eat meat at Samhain at all. Just saying that there is more difficult sacrifices that happen at this time. And so we're offering a lot of that stuff up. That's one of the ways that we're observing this stuff. We're offering a lot of these things up. We're hanging out with spirits. We're witnessing entities that sort of have a foot in both worlds, that show up when the veil is thin, which is a phrase that some folks use to describe a time period like this. And so we see ritual forms like walking in a labyrinth or a maze, communing with the dead, holding a dumb supper, sacrifice, again, as I mentioned before, divination, feasts and bonfires, playing pranks, and sex and sensuality. As well as a lot of ancestor work. A lot of ancestor work taking place at this time of year. Magical workings of all kinds, and I've got a big old list of stuff there. All of these ritual forms are intended to help us sink down into this work and really experience it and be present with it throughout the weeks as we walk up to winter solstice. Again, winter solstice is the moment when our solar gods die, or they have died up to the, at some point up leading up to this point. And that's pretty epic, right? We in the West, we in the modern era, we might come at this as an abstract idea, as an existential experience or experiment. But for ancient peoples and lots of modern peoples, this is a real moment where this energy is at its very lowest and it really has died. So there is a mourning process here. There is a saying thank you and goodbye type process that's happening here. And there is also a deep sense of uncertainty and instability as we watch these systems break down, as we watch the systems that we have been relying on fall apart and undo themselves. So walking a labyrinth or a maze is a process that we can utilize to walk into the center of ourself, stop, and then restart again and come back out again. Very much aligning us with that New Year's energy, if that's something that's ringing true for you. But even for those who are not celebrating a New Year's at this time of the wheel, still a great practice to replicate that spiraling down into the center or spiraling down into the lowest point of energy that the sun is going through, and then coming back up and out again as we move beyond winter solstice into the next year. Communing with the dead. So a lot of folks think of communing with the dead at this time of year because, again, that idea of the veil being thin, that the various worlds that are here at all times are a little easier to access. There are various points in the calendar year, most of them actually found throughout winter, when this phenomenon occurs. But why? Why do we commune with the dead? Part of it is to say thanks. Part of it is to give thanks to all of those energies that were underground pushing up the crops, which is a symbol and an image that we work with heavily throughout Lunasa and Mabon. And those spirits now can finally rest after helping us on the other side with all of that labor. Many traditions say that all through this time period of fall, this is the time when the dead come up above ground and come and hang out and frolic. And it's like they have a day pass. They're allowed to leave campus and go hang out. And that nobody's going to get in trouble for that and everything's okay. But that too that harkens us back also to the Wild Hunt, the Furious Host. That's a lot of those characters. And you don't necessarily want to get scooped up in that, right? And so there is this communion with the dead of just acknowledging that they're here, giving them offerings, saying, hey, hi, it's nice to see you again. Thanks for coming and hanging out. But also because as we head into the dark and into the unknown and the natural world continues to undo itself, we are asking for help. We are asking for advice. And so this is a big part of why divination is such a popular element and a big element during Samhain season, because we need help. We need advice on how do we move through this and what do we do next. Holding a dumb supper. This is another classic. Wait, wrong one. There we go. Holding a dumb supper. This is a really cool tradition that's becoming more and more popular in the modern era. It was popular back in the day. It's becoming popular again. And this is literally holding a supper by yourself or with friends or family where no one talks and there are extra seats given for the beloved dead. You might put out their favorite stuff, grandpa's favorite beer, grandma's favorite pack of cigarettes, whatever. And they are invited to join. If they want to join, they do. If they don't want to, it's no big deal. And the dinner is held in silence. You might do a little ritual opening. You might give an invitation out loud if any beloved and benevolent spirits want to come and hang out and enjoy some food. And it's all good. And this dinner can even have two parts to it. So there can be the part that is held in silence, where beloved ancestors and beloved dead are welcome to come and join. And then there can be a second half where you enjoy a magical supper in honor of Hecate, who is a goddess who is also certainly worshipped and has reign over this time of year in her tradition. Because anytime you get witches together to come and chat and have a dinner together and talk about magic, that is a moment of worship for Hecate. And then you can take any food that is left over, the food that was put on the plates for the beloved dead, for example, and take them outside and leave them at a crossroads. Put it on a paper plate that's, biodegradable, like think about tomorrow, but leaving them at a crossroads. And this is an incredibly old and favored honoring and offering to the goddess Hecate and other goddesses of magical practices. What else? Of course, our fun trick-or-treating and jack-o'-lanterns, right? If we're going to really, really get into it. Excuse me. So, other things that we can be doing at Samhain, playing pranks, and having fun with all of that stuff. The great jack-o'-lantern, I noticed Holly says I should probably put a pumpkin since the last time I was here, years ago. Yes. Well, put a pumpkin here and put a pumpkin on your porch. Jack-o'-lanterns, of course, are the modern American adaptation of a tradition that is at least a couple thousand years old. I know a lot of people have published photos in the last few years of the turnip heads. And that's what it used to be in northern and central and western Europe. The tradition for a very long time was carving out turnips or beets or rutabagas and putting a light inside and carrying it. Before that, potentially, the skulls of people who had died in war or combat or battles, hollowed out and had a candle put inside. Certainly a great way to light the night. Um, and these were intended to frighten off these spirits of chaos, these entities of entropy that were showing up in our environments. But even more than this, um, there's one of our old handsome chaps from 2,000 years ago or whatever. That one's probably not that old. It's probably a couple hundred years old. I added a zero. Whatever. What is time? Um, but our classic tradition of trick or treating and our classic tradition of masking um, also come from this practice of appeasing the spirits of chaos slash doing what we can to either frighten them off or blend in with them. Now, the practice of trick-or-treating has some really interesting connections. We see one of the old traditions that pops up in a bunch of different places throughout the end of fall and the first couple of months of winter are these processions of people who show up at people's houses and are there to eat. Basically, they're there for treats, they're there for snacks, they're there for food. And we see this take place in a couple of different forms. For the most part, the tradition is, well, I don't want to say for the most part. One version of that tradition is people showing up who are now out of work because the fields are empty and all of that labor is no longer needed. But they are members of the community, and so they show up with empty hands asking for handouts. And they then go in and eat food provided by the family on behalf of the dead members of that family. So they are basically the mouths and the bodies that are taking the place of their dead ancestors and eating those offerings. That could be a way of bringing in blessings from ancestors. It could be a way of warding against bad times or bad luck. Or ill wishes from ancestors. And there could even be an element around eating the sins of the dead if somebody had recently died. And also we see this tradition as people masking and dressing up like these spirits of entropy, these spirits of chaos, and either doing that to disguise themselves so that they can travel unperturbed and be left alone, or to pretend basically to be or take the place of these spirits of entropy and chaos and receive the offerings to them and the placation basically. And so the whole idea of trick or treat is people dressing up like these chaotic spirits and showing up at people's doors and people offering these chaotic spirits a little treat so that we will be left alone and you'll fly over my house basically. If you know, you know. So there's a long tradition here, and within all of that stuff there is this element of pranking. This is a classic TPing, which we don't see as often anymore because toilet paper is really expensive, but and people hoard it all the time because the apocalypse. But pranking, playing tricks on each other, tricking each other, like practical jokes, things along those lines, is a holy act. It's a holy tradition at this time of year that was intended to sort of mentally and emotionally prepare everybody for the undoing of space-time, the undoing of the natural order. And I keep using that phrase because magically for me, this is a really potent idea. In the light half of the year, we do. And in the dark half of the year, we undo. And we are hanging out with energies and entities that help us with that and oversee that process. To me, it's weaving. To me, it's weaving through space-time. That we are doing and undoing. We're back and forth. In, out, over, under, ebbing, flowing, etc. Pranking is a part of this magical tradition because it is a reminder to ourselves and each other. Things go backwards, things undo, things become absurd, things become fantastic, things become confusing sometimes. And it's okay. We're going to make it through to the other side. Be weirded out for a while. See what it does for you. Check it out. Try being weird and try weirding out and see what it do. And last but not least on this list, sex and sexuality or sensuality. And I say this in a lot of classes, but whatever those words mean for you, because sex and sensuality can manifest and be embodied in so many ways. But this is a season that is about the descent into stillness and a type of death, an ego death, as we've already discussed with the Underworld Journey, a biorhythmic death, as we have discussed with the sun's journey. And so there is an insistence here on life and vitality in the insistence on sex and sensuality moving through Samhain season. We want to remember, again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the first half of Samhain is overseen by Scorpio, a sign that is traditionally, stereotypically, connected to sex and sexuality. But across the wheel, its opposing sign is Taurus, ruled by the planet Venus. That sign oversees Beltane, the other half of the year, the true opening of the bright half of the year. And so there is this balance, this either or between the two. The sex and sensuality that we experience in Beltane is very turgid. It's very hot. It's very passionate. It's quite swollen. It's very excited. It's very eager. It's very down. But there is this expansiveness about that energy at that time of year. Here at Samhain, it seems a little bit, kind of, on the surface, like the same energy. But it's a little more desperate. It's a little more like, like we've got to reinforce life and vitality in the face of all of these systems that are breaking down and undoing themselves. So, but again, in whatever ways makes sense for you and your lifestyle and how you live and how you work with your body, but in whatever ways that make sense, I highly encourage, get you some. Feasts and bonfires, witches are always setting shit on fire, so no shit. And as we move through Samhain season into Yule, winter solstice, and then to a lesser extent Imbolc, but really fall and the first part of winter, feasting is a big deal. Why? Because, well, we just had these massive months of harvest, hopefully. So, so we've got the food to eat, so let's eat it. But also because it's cold outside and we're just hanging out at the house. And I don't know about you, but when I have a day off, it's me on the couch with piles of food. So I'm just honoring my ancestors with this bag of Cheetos. I don't know what you want from me. But feasting. We're getting fat for winter. It's cold outside. I need an extra layer. Don't at me. All right. So when we are moving through this time period, when we are building our altars, when we're doing our magical work, etc., etc., the list of deities is far too long to discuss. Death is probably the most universal concept on Earth. And, humans have been burying each other and hosting funeral-like traditions for hundreds of thousands of years is what archaeology and anthropology are suggesting in the last couple of years. There, I think, might be more death deities than any other type of deity on the planet. And I think that that's because death is, other than being born, dying is the only universal experience that we all have. So there is a fraternity in this experience as well. But also because it's so confusing, right? And you might get answers from any other form of deity. You might have reflection on a before, during, and after with any other experience that you have in life. But we can only look forward to death. We may process it in the midst of it happening, some of us, but we have no idea what, if anything, happens after it. And so it is quite the mysterious experience for humans. And I think that that's a big part of why we have so many deities. So I don't have a deity list for you, is my long-winded point here. But Wikipedia has like 1 bajillion death deities listed, and most of them are hyperlinks, and you can go and read about, literally hundreds of different gods and goddesses and death assisting entities and psychopomps and messengers. And I highly recommend doing that during this season. Go study witches. Go learn some shit, witches. Okay. But gateways, spirals, skulls and bones, spiderwebs, labyrinths, masks, and brooms. I think we've covered a lot of this already. But gateways, because we really are passing through an initiatory process. Again, for some witches, this is a New Year's point, and so there's the old year, we walk through the gateway into the new year. For others working with life, death, rebirth imagery, again, gateways. Or just simply acknowledging that we are leaving the light half of the year behind and we're stepping into the dark half of the year for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, for the atheists in the class. Skulls and bones, just, casual reminders of our own mortality. It's chill. Spider webs, spiders are just cool. It's super goth also, right? If you're gonna do the goth aesthetic, what better time? But also because of the connectivity there. And the capacity to be sensitive and be aware and be connected to information from your environment, to be able to keep yourself fed and keep yourself safe and your people throughout the coming months. And masks and labyrinths we already discussed, and brooms, of course. We're not hanging out with brooms as witches, but I could do a 2-hour class on just the magic of the broom itself, but this is a tool that we are utilizing as modern witches for a variety of things. One, creating sacred space for our rituals, our cleansing and our protection stuff, our purification work that we talked about earlier in class. So the magical, energetic sweeping of a space as a means of bringing a little order to a context within a larger context of disorder, as well as the astral projection and the spirit flying and the movement through the veil work that a lot of witches are doing at this time of year. The broom, of course, being a vehicle of choice for many witches. I mean, that's how I get around. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Okay. So, now we move into the second hour of class. Just about there. Feel free to go pee, refill your water, adjust yourself on the couch, get your shit right. Let me check my notes before we move on to the next portion of the wheel, then work. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, yeah, let's move on. Okay. Last thing I will mention before we move into the global themes. For a lot of modern witches, pagans, heathens, who are working with the triple goddess energy, the triple goddess symbol. The goddess, this is from my book that I produce for patrons. Yes, perks on perks, people. And let me say this also, because what is this class if it isn't like 100 sidebars? I am the queen of tangents. Hi. These books are the books that I have been working on, editing from year to year, adding to, changing up, etc., since 2015. And they are going away because something more fabulous is replacing them. And patrons earlier this year got some sneak peeks on a couple of our Sabbats of what I've been working on behind the scenes. But this is chock-a-block, chock full of data, information, references, dates, etc., and it's about to be even more ridiculous. Currently a Patreon exclusive. In the years past, I have sold them from time to time. I may again, but currently a Patreon exclusive because you enable me. Okay. From the book, the goddess is finalizing her transition from mother to crone. She is leaving behind her verdant, luscious body and revealing herself as also the skeletal frost queen, sterile and seemingly apathetic to human needs. Casual. She oversees the final destruction and dissolution of the physical world. It's about time. And the Holly King, aka the Dark Twin, is dying. So again, we're speaking to a particular form of modern paganism here, where the goddess shows up in 3 parts, and the god shows up in 2 different parts: the Holly King and the Oak King. And the Holly King is dying. The Holly King's reign began at summer solstice and is coming to an end in these last 6 to 8 weeks. All gods, especially any god associated with life, fertility, abundance, and vegetation, are dying or dead and going through their underworld journey to be reborn at either winter solstice or spring equinox. Okay, so now we move into a little moment here of our global themes. Global themes that we see at holidays and festivals being celebrated around the planet at the same time of year, very, very similar. We have endings and beginnings. We have a lot of different New Year's that happen at this time of year. Where's my notes? Where are you? Just trust me, it's true. Babylonians, Jewish folk, witches, Roman Syrians, like lots of people are celebrating a New Year's at this time of year. As well as the end of the old thing, transformations, fate, rites of passage, sex, death, and, of course, chaos. Now, this chaos theme is really important. A couple of weeks ago, if you were listening to the podcast, we talked about the Winter's Finding, or Winterblot, which is celebrated by Norse people somewhere in the month of October as basically the hinge of the year. Like, this is officially, we're in the dark part of the year. And the Disir and a lot of like darker magic oriented goddesses kind of oversee the process and come into their power. And we see that tradition echoed in a lot of our October into November celebrations. So we have, which has already passed for us this year, but the Greek tradition of Thesmophoria, which is also known as the Bitching Festival. I've got my ticket for next year already. I've got a lifetime pass, let's be real. But this is a day at the end of the harvest festivals, after the Eleusinian mysteries have already taken place, where all of the women of Greece would basically leave town. They would leave a plant in their bed that was an anhedoniac, like an anti-pleasure plant. It was basically like, screw you, buddy, I'm out. and they would go into the fields and set up a little camp for themselves and just party like crazy for 3 days, burping, farting, wrestling, fighting. The older women of the group would oversee the younger women of the group, and basically it was a like, get it out of your system moment. We've had this crazy harvest festivals. We've done all this wild work. Again, this would also be taking place after the Eleusinian mysteries, and so you've got all the trippiness of people experiencing the Eleusis mysteries, the death and rebirth process of Demeter and of obviously Persephone, core, but also the work put into holding this multi-week festival. I'm sure the priestesses were like, I'm done. Like, I just want to fucking hang out with a glass of Kikion and like chill or trip myself. I would like to be the one partying now. Thank you. And so this is just 3 days of just like bacchanal, freak out. And again, an aggressiveness, like fighting to an extent and wrestling was encouraged. And I think that is a really important element. I have a huge piece on my website about Thesmophoria, and specifically Demeter Thesmophoros, which is a particular version of Demeter that oversees Thesmophoria and her very interesting experiences that she's having at this time of year with the dildo-headed goddess Baubo. As I mentioned, sex and sexuality, kind of a thing at this time of year, just saying. Also death, so that's kinky. And, you know, perfectly natural, apparently, because we've been doing it for quite some time. Important stuff. Other things that we're seeing at this time of year, Transgender Remembrance Day, Nick Nevin, which is the old Celtic New Year, that hits on November 7th. Which is the actual point of the sun being at 15 degrees of Scorpio. So it is the actual what I refer to as solar Samhain. The feasts of Oya from our Yoruba friends and ancestors, Guy Fawkes Day. If you know, you know. Talking about a little prank. Just kidding, guys. Please don't sue me or arrest me. Witches' Remembrance Day, which is also another global holiday. And then, obviously, on the day of October 31st, or these days right around that, we have Dia de los Muertos, the Huedo Festival. That's from our Latin American friends and ancestors. Huedo Festival from our Yoruba friends and ancestors. The Day of the Banshee that I mentioned earlier. For our Ireland friends and ancestors, the Rites of Hell from our Norse friends and ancestors, Nos Caelan Gaith from our Welsh friends and ancestors, the Feast of Baron Zamedi from our Voudon and Haitian friends and ancestors, and of course the Descent of Inanna from our Babylonian Sumerian friends and ancestors. So there is a whole lot of festivals, past and present, around the world that are dedicated to witnessing the breakdown of the natural order, the inviting in of the dead, the honoring of the dead, partying with the dead, having a super fun time, but also sort of checking in and releasing some of this energy. So I want to come back to a little bit of what I was talking about with Thesmophoria. Also at this time, we will see from our Hindu friends and ancestors, the Kali Puja, from our Greek friends and ancestors, the Feast of Hecate, and pushing out into the season at the beginning of December. I'm going to also mention here again, Guy Fawkes Night. Samhain also being referred to as Devil's Night. But way out at the beginning of December, December 5th, we have Krampusnacht. I absolutely do not think of that as a Yule festival. That is a Samhain festival as we approach Yule. And mind you, Krampusnacht, that comes during Sagittarius season. You people don't see us. Let me tell you that right now. You don't know what Sagittarius is. You have no idea. But there is this, we see in many of these traditions, this inviting in of the chaos. And so this comes back to what I was saying at the beginning of class. If there are devils to be met on the Underworld Journey, they surely will come from your own heart / make room for chaos, or chaos will make its room. In these festivals, you see ancient and modern peoples saying, you know, it's basically a type of radical acceptance, really, if we're going to be honest about it. Where they're saying this inevitable shift is happening. This unsettling, disturbing, weird, frightening experience is happening. There is nothing that I can do about the sun changing its path in the sky. There is nothing I can do about the waning light and the oncoming cold and frost. There's nothing I can do about it. And so I think that a lot of these holidays are there to help us invite in these forces that are otherwise really frightening and destabilizing for us, and find a spot for them and help us process, like, here we go into the dark. Here we go into the unknown. Here we go into the spooky. And who am I going to meet there? My own bullshit. And how am I going to deal with that? We'll find out, right? We'll find out. Maybe I might engage in some divination to get some advice from my ancestors on how they dealt with it. How did they deal with themselves when these things happened for them 100 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 100,000 years ago? Just that type of stuff. But also, coming back to some of those other themes that we talked about, there is also a deep insistence on life. And in Thesmophoria, there also is a lot of partying and yelling and eating food and drinking wine and having a great time. We also see from our Hindu friends and ancestors Diwali happening at this time of year, which is another huge New Year's festival. And it is absolutely a celebration of life and light. And one of the main symbols of Diwali is the lighting of lamps. And this to me is a very important element in Samhain. We're going to get into this more in the weekly podcast. We just kind of really don't have time to do it in the scope of this class. But I'm going to break this down in a more granular way as we move through the podcast each week. But as we move through Scorpio season and Sagittarius season, there is this element of asking for the light and then receiving the light, and now we are responsible for dispensing the light. And so I'm a big fan of Diwali for the symbolism of the lamps and lighting the lamps, and not just cursing the darkness, but inviting it in as an exciting time of year. Okay, so let's move on to breaking down some of this information in a little bit more of a granular way. And let me give you some tools to work with for the next 6 to 8 weeks as inroads for doing this work. So let's see what my next slide is. Hey, perfect. All right, go me. Yay, there it is. Okay. So these are the constellations that are overhead while we are hanging out in Samhain season. We see Scorpio and we see Sagittarius. Now, every class I go on the big rant about sidereal astrology versus tropical astrology, and that is because the astrology that we practice in the West is about 2,000 years behind what is physically happening in the sky. Does that mean it's... We're not getting into it. Don't ask me that question. But these are the fixed stars that we want to be thinking about, and the constellations that we want to be thinking about as we are moving through this portion of the wheel. The sun may or may not actually be here, but again, we break all of this stuff down in the podcast each week, or however often I end up doing it. So do I have my notes for this or not? Let's see. Yes, I do. Hey, there we go. All right. I am a professional, and I don't need that judgment from you. Okay. Thank you. So these are the stars that we're working with. These are the signs that we're working with. And when we're working with Scorpio energy, well, actually, I'll get into that in a minute. When we are working with the fixed stars in the constellations, this is one of the ways that we will find some of the deep roots of the mythic forms and the archetypes who we hang out with at this time of year. But just to give you a sense of what we're talking about here, Antares, for example, is one of our fixed stars that we work with. And this is, this name, Antares, literally means anti-Aries, because on the opposite side of the sky, the constellation Aries is heading down into the west, down below the horizon, as the constellation of Scorpio is coming up. Aries, of course, being the sign that oversees the start of spring and the start of the bright half of the year. So this star is truly like antithetical to it. It is fighting it. Now, there are other things that I could say about Antares. No, I have to pull up my notes. I have to say them. Antares is one of our Behenian stars. That is for people who do stellar magic, another thing that we just don't quite have time for. And this star is thought of to be in the breast of the scorpion, / the breast of the scorpion goddess Ishara. Her name kind of sounds like Ishtar or Inanna, huh? I'm sure it's just a coincidence. This star also connects to the archangel Uriel. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But I had to say at least that. Another fixed star that we work with through this sign is Lesath. And this star represents 2 parts of a lock, which I think connects us very nicely to some of our sexual imagery that we're working with here. And then also we have the fixed star Deshuba, which is thought of as the forehead or the crown on the forehead of the scorpion. This star was also referred to as Isis at one point in history, and which we see with a few fixed stars. But this maybe was one iteration of Isis, and we know that at this time of year, Isis and her sister Nephthys are going through their great rite of witnessing Osiris be killed and chopped up into a bunch of pieces, and then they go and find his body parts and they resurrect him from the dead, and then he becomes a god of the dead in the underworld. Again, probably just a coincidence that this is happening here. There's a star named after her, but whatever, I thought I'd mention it. But the other interesting name for Teshubah, or idea behind Teshubah, is that this star represents a fruit on the tree of life. So I'm just going to leave that there. I know that's like your connection to that phrase or that idea might be very Christian based. Spoiler, it's not Christian. It's a little, just like a little bit older than that. Just like a little shitload older than that. But that's all I'm going to say about that. So there's something here, right, about knowledge. There's something here about asking for the message, and getting it, and then what's up with that, right? The poison of the scorpion. Is the poison medicine? Question mark. Things that we will be getting into over the next several weeks. And then as we move through the season, we, very casually cross over the center of the galaxy, whatever. And then we go into Sagittarius and all of the super fun fixed stars that we have there, like Nunki, which was at one point the god Enki, the arrow, and in between these two constellations, we have a tiny little place in the sky called the Gate of God, probably not a big deal, where it was thought that the souls of people who had died over the last year would be sent up and out of the world and back into, the universal goo, the soul of God. So that happens here too. Wild, crazy. As we move through this part of the sky, or this part of the wheel, our full moon names very much echo a lot of the weather phenomenon and animal phenomenon that we might be witnessing in the world. The November full name moons are things like beaver moon, frost moon, fog moon, oak moon, moon when the horns are broken off, and of course that speaks to like the antlers of deer and elk and other animals whose horns shed at this time of year. And then in December we have cold moon, Christmas moon, long nights moon, snow moon, moon before Yule, if it happens before Yule, 12th moon, and a lot of our moon names come from the indigenous groups here in America. And they were ways of tracking time. They were ways of remembering what was going on in that season and connecting to that stuff. And then sky-wise, the other stuff that we have going on at this time of year, every single year, we have the Orionids meteor showers, the Taurid meteor showers, and the Leonid meteor showers. And you can always look those up in your local area to see if you're going to be able to see them and what direction of the sky they'll be coming from. But why I mention that is because all of our biggest and most intense and longest running meteor showers happen at the same time that we have a whole bunch of ancestor worship festivals. It's very consistently throughout the year happening. And I love that connection of the idea that ancestors are not only these entities from below, but we may also be thinking about ancestors as, stars raining down from above and coming in with their flashes of enlightenment and flashes of insight and benevolence. Side note to the side note of that is how many different gods and goddesses, especially goddesses, we see who were venerated and are maybe venerated, not to be offensive to anybody, in various religions around the world. Meteorites, kind of a big deal. And that would be these meteor showers here that we're experiencing. Again, for the folks that work with the Behenian fixed stars during Samhain season, we're going to see Guiana, Spica, Arcturus, and Alphecca all rising at this time of year, for those that are doing the stellar magics. Um, let's see. So yes, let me go to this. Here is our Samhain sky guide. I'll put that on full screen. If you want to take a screenshot of that, you can have that for the cost of free 99. Come on. That's what's up. Is this everything that's happening? Absolutely not. No, but this is the stuff that I felt like was the most important to write down. This is a list of our full moons and our new moons, our meteor showers, the sun entering various signs, so we know what part of the wheel is getting lit up for us with our moon work and our solar work. And then what I will say about the astrology of this year's Samhain 2024, the two big things that I think we have happening in this Samhain are November 19th, just before the sun moves into Sagittarius, Pluto enters Aquarius. And normally I wouldn't mention an ingress like this necessarily, but Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. So, that this is happening during Samhain season, I think is kind of a big deal. And also, Pluto moves signs about every 15 to 20 years. So no matter what, this is kind of a big deal. So there, I think, is a real extra emphasis here on thinking about the overarching themes of Samhain and in what ways some of that stuff might be ending for you, and in what ways some new elements might be coming in for you. This will be the only time in your lifetime that you will experience Pluto in Aquarius. It will be here for about 20 years, and it won't be back here for about 250 years. So, kick your shoes off, pack a lunch, hang out. But recognizing also that the way that Samhain has felt for you for the last 16 years, give or take, is changing. And Samhain may begin to take on some different elements now that Pluto has moved into, or is about to move into Aquarius. It's a pretty epic thing. It's pretty epic. And then also this Samhain, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde. Mercury is going to retrograde between 22 degrees and 6 degrees of Sagittarius. Mercury does not really enjoy traveling through Sagittarius. Mercury rules Gemini. Gemini and Sagittarius are opposing signs. So Mercury is in the sign of its opposition, not exactly stoked about that. And across the chart, Jupiter, the ruling planet of Sagittarius, is currently retrograde in the sign of Gemini, where it does not want to be hanging out. I actually think that these two retrogrades in opposition to each other could be really, really cool and an amazing time to go backwards or undo. I hope now it makes sense why I have kept talking about going backwards and undoing the work that we are doing in the rest of the year, that we're undoing it during Samhain season, because now we have this very potent retrograde cycle happening right towards the end of it, where we have assistance from the gods. We have assistance from Mercury and Jupiter both saying, let's go back, review, undo, reconsider, and then move forward again at winter solstice when all the other systems are moving forward as well. The other cool thing, I didn't note this on the Sky Guide, but the other cool thing that's happening is as we move through November and December, our calendar day, the number on the calendar, and our lunar day, the day of the moon, will be in sync for November and the majority of and all of December up to the very end, and then it changes, and it goes further and further out of sync as we move into next year. It happens from time to time. It's just a cool thing. But again, for those of you who are working with Samhain as a New Year's idea or a resetting moment, very nice to have the lunar cycle in sync with the solar cycle or the calendar cycle. Our last new moon of fall will be November 30th. And for some of us, that will be a black new moon. We will talk about that more as we get closer to that. But very, very potent resetting opportunity there. And then our last full moon of fall will be December 15th. That's my birthday. Thank you very much. With our full cold moon at 23 degrees of Gemini. And so, whatever our fall business is that we need to be taking care of, whatever magic we need to be working on in fall, those are going to be our last two moments to hang out with that kind of energy. All right, I am going to change this slide. Grab your screenshot in 3, 2, what? Okay. Oops, I moved to the wrong. There we go. So what else did I want to show you? Oh yeah, that. Wait, don't look at that. Do not look at that. Okay. Because I want to do this instead. Okay. Wait, no. There we go. I'm a professional. I don't need your judgment. Okay. Here we go. So, that was talking a lot about the astronomy. Let's get to the astrology. As I've mentioned, when we're moving through Scorpio, or when we're moving through Samhain season, we are moving through Scorpio and Sagittarius. This year, Scorpio starts October 23rd. Yes, this does change by a day or two just about every year. And when we are working with the sun in Scorpio, we are dealing with the element of water. Scorpio is a fixed sign, and the tarot card connected to this is death. We will get more into the tarot here in just a second. The big themes, stuff we've already been talking about, right? Regeneration, death, sex, power, birth, obsession, penetration, healing, secrets, and waste. And this idea of penetration, waka waka, is a reoccurring theme through this time as well. And yeah, the connection to the idea of sex, I think, is pretty overt there. But we are going to work with the idea of penetration in a variety of ways during Samhain season. A bunch of stuff is in us, and we are in a bunch of stuff. But this is what's up. As the last rays of sunlight dwindle, Scorpio oversees a season of transformation. We are faced with the stark issues of sex and death and reconciling what we are learning from our shadow. This is absolutely the time to dive deep. And I know I've said that a million times. I'll probably say it a few more times before the class is over. While we are working through Scorpio, here are our new moons and our new moon and our full moon. Let me check my notes. So here is the funny thing that I mentioned about the black moon. The black moon that we may or may not be having depends on where you are in the country when this is happening, or where you are in the world when this is happening. So November, for some of us, has 2 new moons. The first one is November 1st. And the second one is November 30th at 10:21 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That new moon is happening December 1st for everybody else around the planet. And so for some of us, we are having a new moon at the beginning of November and a new moon at the end of November. And that second one is a black moon. For everybody else around the planet, you are having a new moon at the beginning of December and the end of December. And that second new moon is the black moon. And I love that this whole thing is sort of like holding on, like, bookends our season, and the work that we're doing at this time, because that second or last new moon that is being considered in this whole configuration is just on the other side of the winter solstice. So very, very cool. Very cool. So we've got our new moon at 9 degrees of Scorpio. And if you're going to do yourself a cute little ritual moment, our new moon is in sync with Samhain this year. I'm recording this class on October 30th. Yes, I just had to look because I have no idea where I am in space or time. It's just... Oh, anyways, tomorrow, as I am recording this, is the 31st, and the next day is the 1st, and so Samhain, again, is synced up with our new moon this year. If you have not already, now is the time to engage your shadow work. What is your rage? What is your fear? What is your helplessness? That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. When I'm talking about the demons, when I'm talking about devils coming up from your own heart, that's their names. Their names are rage, fear, and helplessness. Super fun little boy band of anxiety and neuroses. It's great. And if we don't invite them in and make it cozy for them, it gets super duper weird. So this new moon is here to help us do that thing and engage that energy. And then 2 weeks later, we have our full frost moon at 24 degrees of Taurus on November 15th. And, you know, we have had a lot of really wild astrology, but we didn't need the astrology to have a very wild year on Earth. And certainly, as we mentioned earlier in the class, genocide and Holocaust was not invented in the last 365 days, but it's been in the spotlight. And I think part of the horror for a lot of folks at this time is, yes, that these things are happening, but that they've been happening for hundreds of years. We're just seeing them now because they weren't filmed before. And so recognizing that a lot of our society, wherever we live on Earth, but especially if we are anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, a lot of our society is built on bones. It's built on blood. It's built on some really horrible shit. Samhain season is an opportunity for us to be held by the biorhythmic systems around us as we challenge that and dig in on that stuff. So if you decide to do a ritual out here on the full moon for Taurus, here is, you know, some journaling or work for you. This harvest has been intense. We've pulled in much karma. On this moon, eat good food, wear fantastic clothes, and enjoy your house and enjoy your body. Because to do this work, to face this work, we have to have our cups full. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can come back over and over and continue to attend the work that needs doing. We cannot expect ourselves to authentically show up for really hard, frustrating, frightening, destabilizing psychological work and emotional work without implicating some really fundamental and foundational self-care systems and daily check-in routines and things like that. So, you know, having a day where you put on your favorite clothes and eat your favorite food and listen to your favorite songs is absolutely vital in the midst of, you know, the world falling apart around you. No big deal. It's just witchcraft, guys. we got this. And then the sun will enter Sagittarius. And for those last 4 weeks of Samhain season, we are hanging out with this fiery sign. Our modality is mutable because Sagittarius is the last sign that we pass through at the end of fall before we enter winter. And so Sagittarius energy and work is here to help us continue to transform and change shape, not only as these systems fall apart around us, but also as fall truly becomes winter and we go into the heart of the stillness portion of the wheel and the death and resurrection of the death and rebirth of the solar deity and the sun itself. Themes that may come up for us in that last month: hope, sage-like experiences, so having conversations with people or having conversations with wisdom sources that are very sage-like, philosophical exploration of things, truth, optimism, expansion, but also blind faith and restlessness and dogma. Those are pitfalls of Sagittarius energy. Sag sun, Sag stellium here. I know I fall for my own bullshit quite frequently. And in our world right now, dogma and righteousness and zealotry, kind of a thing. And so in those last 4 weeks of moving through Sagittarius, there is also this energy of, let me call myself out on my most righteous bullshit too. The things that feel untouchable because it's about God or goddess for me. Even there, maybe especially there, depending on the work that we do. And I know there are some of you out there that are doing this metaphysical work like I am. Maybe especially us need to be getting in and calling ourselves out on our hypocrisy or the places where we have avoided the conversation. Lovingly, respectfully, get your shit together, okay? Okay. If this is you, I'm saying it to you, okay? Lovingly. And As we move through those last 4 weeks, here are our moons. So we have, I'm listed because I'm here in Seattle. We have our new black moon on at 9 degrees of Sagittarius, November 30th. And this is a great time for journaling on an epic journey that calls you, but that would push you out of your comfort zone. And that journey could be in any landscape, internal or external. I encourage you to do some journaling on, like, what's a trip? What, again, an internal trip or an external trip that would really call you out of your comfort zone, but you desire it deeply. Like, this might be the year to seed that. Knowing, of course, that you might be confronted with some really trippy stuff. And then way out on December 15th, we have our full cold moon at 23 degrees of Gemini. And this is another journaling practice that I encourage. Describe the generations of your family that you know about only using adjectives. And my guess, I may be wrong, but my guess is that you probably already have a list of adjectives in your mind of, oh, you know, the Smith family is always XYZ. The Adams family is always blah, 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 right? Those things that you and your family members have always said about yourselves and your line. And I will also say this does not have to be genetic family. As queers, we get to choose our family. But as anybody, we get to choose our family. So straights, enjoy. You can have some too. And so whoever it is that you really, really, really identify with as your family, what, going back into the family line, what are the adjectives that have always been used to describe those people and their actions? Okay. Glancing at chat before I move into the last-ish portion of this. Yay, loving the live stream. Awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Oh my God, I'm actually doing that. Ugh. but do it. Click the buttons. Click the buttons. Do it right now. Click the fucking buttons. I know the fear around election day, my God, right? I know. That's like, I truly am avoiding the conversation. I genuinely am. And I want to be very earnest about that. Because the wheel turns and the wheel turns. This work is true, regardless of who is or is not being elected. For the record, fuck Trump forever. For the record. Also, fuck anybody that supports genocide. And yes, I realize that that's like, we're not supposed to talk about that, but I'm talking about it. So there it is. I'm not telling anybody who to vote for. I do believe in voting. I think it's important and powerful. They wouldn't fight against it if it wasn't. I also understand people who totally question that system and balk at it and think it's a bunch of crap. So I get it. But yes, and also, regardless of who gets elected, we are only at the beginning of this conversation that has to take place no matter who ends up president. We have to. So this is just the beginning of whoever gets elected. This is just the beginning of getting into this conversation. It's just, well, let me say this too. It's just the beginning for some of you. All right. That's it. I'm going to start to get too shady. I got to go. All right. Let us move into tarot. Actually, before I do that, let me read my little thing out of the book and then we'll get into the tarot. Okay. Samhain is the witch's new year, and there is an opportunity to hit the reset button on personal and spiritual matters. Forgive. Release debts, financial and energetic and otherwise, between you and other people. Samhain season shuts the door on the bright part of the year. Our fields are barren. Our fruits have been picked. Branches lay bare, scratching at the stormy skies. We might have been able to logically rationalize the shift during Mabon, but now we feel the earth dying and changing into the crone. Along with this dissolution, our sense of reality shimmers like a chimera, like we're watching the world from underwater. We wander amongst the veggies in the garden, dying on the vine, the last of our fruit left to rot on the branch, twisting forlorn and warped in the frosty night wind. Mold creeps across the flowers we exchanged with each other only months ago. We walk in a liminal space, cloaked in shadows. Both reveling in the destruction and living your best life in the face of it are appropriate responses to the energy of Samhain season. We can see through the veils of time and space, so work with this and reach out lovingly to dead loved ones and ephemeral spirits who are otherwise unavailable. The last half of Samhain season is overseen by Sagittarius. We become accustomed to walking among the spirits, remembering that death makes us all family, but losing our grip on the physical reality a little bit. And maybe that's okay. Ritual, ceremony, and faith can help us wander in this holy space for the short time that we're here. Listen for and document the messages from the other side, and then renew your spirit. And as we move through this astrology, you can be looking at your natal chart and looking at where is Scorpio and where is Sagittarius. That is the portion that the sun is moving through, and the sun relates to our sense of self, our personality, our goals, our aspirations, and so the sun is moving through this part of your chart and lighting up all those things as well. This is where our new moons are going to be, and so this is where we're going to be seeding or initiating or opening up or coming back around and starting again those processes. And then on the other side of the chart, look for Taurus and Gemini. That is where we're going to have our full moons. So where in your chart is Taurus and Gemini? That's where we're going to have our full moons. And that's where we're going to be seeing some kind of a process or a portion of our life come to fruition or come up to a crisis point or come to a type of fullness or actualization or realization, or something comes into the full light of understanding or being known. And so that's where the emphasis is at. Again, join me for the podcasts and we will talk about this in more detail. All right. So now let us move to tarot. Tarot, my friend tarot. I have so much writing on my website about these cards that we are about to talk about. So much writing. So you can head to my website, look for the Wheel of the Year in the menu, look for the Samhain page within the Wheel of the Year, and then just scroll down and you'll see links to a whole bunch of different articles. Goddess of the Portrayed, talking about some of the darker death goddesses that we work with this time of year, as well as a whole bunch of these tarot pieces that we work with. So I think of tarot as like flashcards, and they are perfect accumulations of color and shape and symbol and idea. And so, for those with eyes to see, when you look at a tarot card, it is very much like looking at a flashcard, and you see layer on layer on layer of symbol and imagery. And no, there we go. And so the first collection of cards that we work with as we move through Samhain season are the Death card, surrounded by the Tower card and the Judgment card. What a fun collection of cards. Who isn't looking forward to that? That's like everybody's favorite boy band. Woot. Okay. So why on earth would I pick these three cards? Well, I didn't. You can blame magicians. But it's the goddamn Kabbalists and the Thelemites, I tell you what. But what we see here is a collection of three cards that are pretty heavy-duty experiences. All three of these cards speak to the ideas of transformation. All three of these cards speak to the idea of a force bigger than us that we just kind of are at the whim of. And, how do we deal with it? this is another thing where we don't have time to go into all of the granular details. Go read that stuff on my website. Go. / thanks patrons, because you guys made it possible for me to not work and write those pieces, and I published them on Patreon first, and then a year later they got published for the public. So thanks, guys. But why these guys? Okay, well, let's talk about it. The death card connects us to the sign of Scorpio. It is ruled by the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio has 2 planetary rulers. The ancient planetary ruler, Mars, as I mentioned previously in the class, connects us to the Tower card. And then the modern planetary ruler of Scorpio is Pluto, and in some magical systems, Pluto is connected to the Judgment card. This is not true in all magical systems. The Judgment card also is the spirit of fire, which I think is very interesting, that it's the card that connects death to the Sagittarius tarot, a sign that is a fire sign, Pluto being about underground fire, as I mentioned at the beginning of class. Again, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, or it's totally on purpose, because wizards. So in these cards, we are hanging out with these ideas that are vast and huge and old and immovable. They're not really impressed by us. And it can feel very intense to be in the face of these entities. I have a whole bunch of these to share with you guys, actually, because I wanted you to be able to have these. I'll put them up so you can take some screenshots and have them to meditate with, unless you have your own deck. I recommend meditating with these cards solo, like just the single cards by themselves, but I also recommend putting them together in groups and looking at them in a collection. And so here's the 3-pack. The deck that we're looking at in this image is the Pamela Coleman Smith-Waite deck, or Smith-Waite, or Rider-Waite. We name Pamela Coleman Smith here. And these are those moments where I'm like stun locked, because I'm like, there's so much to say and I can't say it all. What do I say? But death is one of the only cards that we see a flag on, and yet also judgment is one of the only cards that we see a flag on. Flags are quite rare in tarot. And so there is something very important about whatever these entities are doing, that they get to carry flags. The flag is the representation of the word. Again, if you don't study much religion, which is fair, those of us in the West often come to this idea, again, through Abrahamic faiths or Christianity, this idea of the word, but it is significantly older than that. The oldest deity that I have found that speaks the world into being is a deity that I mentioned previously, Kali Ma. She is known in the West mostly as just being a destroyer goddess, but in fact she is a great creator, a great sustainer, and a great destroyer. And she is responsible for speaking the world into being. She is described as doing that about 3,000 years before anybody ever heard of the God of Abraham. So that dude can take a seat. Kali Ma would have an idea of something that should exist in the world, and she would make a sound, and then that word came into existence, and a golden glowing letter, Sanskrit letter, would appear before her, and then that thing existed in the world. And she is known by her devotees. She's described in a very cool way. The gods and goddesses are as children on the lap of Kali. That's how vast she is in their pantheon. In fact, in one of her myths, she literally takes the meat of her own thigh and draws it up like clay and creates the other gods and goddesses. Shiva, Lakshmi, etc. We are seeing some of that here in this imagery. Truly. But what we're ultimately seeing in this is the entity of death, the entity of change and transformation and transition, showing up and saying, that's it. Like, you had a great run, go ahead and take a nap. I don't care if you're innocent, I don't care if you're rich, I don't care if you're powerful, I don't care. Everything changes and everything is changed. Um, and so death itself is a pretty shocking experience. I don't know if you've tried it, but it's wild. And then on either side we have the Tower and we have the Judgment card. And these cards are really here saying, don't fight this. Because when you fight it, the Tower card says, you get messed up and you still die. Like, the thing in you that needs to die is still going to die. The change that needs to happen is still going to happen. And you can put your fingers in your ears and go, la 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 la, I'm unaffected by this. You can't get me, entropy. You can't touch me, universe. But it will come for you eventually. And so we can also give ourselves over to this process. It doesn't make it any less frightening, but it can make it a little easier. Again, deep radical acceptance. The Judgment card here is saying that when we allow ourselves to go through this process of profound transformation, allowing the ego to die off and allowing authentic self to be born and move through, we will look back at previous versions of ourselves and not even recognize who we used to be. It's pretty cool stuff. And it's ideas that have been around for thousands and thousands of years, because this is the ultimate message that we get from the Underworld Journey of Inanna, when she goes down and meets her twin sister at Eshkagal and lays there in life and death for 3 days with her twin. They become one entity and then they separate again. Polygendered beings are flying around trying to figure out, why has everything on Earth died? What's going on? When Inanna and Ishtar make their way back up from their underworld experience, they meet tons of people along the way. They have to send somebody back to the land of the dead to take their place, because that's just how, like, you can't let the scales get too out of balance, right? Scales, Libra. Oh, wait, that's the sign that comes before Scorpio. Crazy. But she has to send someone back so that the scales are balanced. And she meets this person from her childhood and that person from various parts of her life, And these are all good people. They haven't done anything wrong. And she's thinking to herself, I can't send them back in my stead. What she's saying is, I can't put this work off on anybody else. I have to do this. I have to have this tower moment. I have to call myself out on my own righteous bullshit. I have to call myself out on my dogma and my crap. And I have to let those parts of me that are ego-based and feeling really defensive die off and be killed and evolve forward. There's going to be a period of stillness that's really frightening because I don't understand it. I don't know what happens there, and I certainly don't know what happens after that. And yet, where I am in my journey, when I look back at previous versions of myself, given everything that I've been through and everything that I know now, I can't go back. I'm not that person anymore. This collection these are the same cards, but through the Boda deck, the builders of the Aditum deck. This is a deck put together by a guy named Paul Foster Case, RIP. Incredible ceremonial hermetic magician. There's a book called The Tarot by him that I literally read over and over again. I read it every year. And there's, a lot of similarities, some interesting differences. I'll put this up big so that you can grab that screenshot for yourself as well if you like. This deck comes in black and white, and you, the student, are encouraged to paint the cards to develop a very intimate relationship with every little tiny detail that is in the card, which I absolutely freaking love. I think that is so cool. But again, same idea here. Lots of esoteric symbolism here. Lots of good stuff. Just leaving that up for you to kind of trip out on. Okay. And then I have a piece on my website called The Posse of the Death card. So I have a piece on my website called Growing Death that is an intimate dive down into the death card. And then I have 3 other pieces called The Posse of the Death card that talk about the Tower connected to Mars, talks about Judgment connected to Pluto, and it talks about the Fool. Why the Fool? Because in modern magical systems, The Fool card is connected to the planet Uranus, and Uranus in modern magical systems is exalted in the sign of Scorpio. So we can work with the Fool card. Yes, when working with the Death card, we have zombies, we have people falling out of a building that is exploding, or we have a guy jumping off a cliff. So there you go. Happy Samhain. All right. Moving into Sagittarius, we have the Temperance card and the Wheel of Fortune card. It's fine, everybody. Everything's going to be super great. Stick with me. Sagittarius season is what comes after death. It's where shit gets really weird. The Temperance card is the depiction of a variety of very interesting entities. This entity that is in this card is depicted as one of the 4 archangels in some systems. Other people say that this is Metatron. Other people say that this is the Holy Guardian Angel, or like the higher pieces of ourself. I have my own personal ideas and intimations about who this might be. As a hint, note the flowers that are in the bottom of this card. And here is the Boda version. The Temperance card in the Builders of the Adytum doesn't have the flowers in this one. It has a rainbow overhead. Interesting difference there. Interesting detail. And so then we also work with this card while hanging out with the Wheel of Fortune. Why? Temperance connects us to Sagittarius, and the ruling planet of Sagittarius is Jupiter, and that connects us to the Wheel of Fortune card. This entity shows up when we are doing the work, when we are calling ourselves out and we are saying to ourselves and the guides, gods, and guardians that we work with, I really do want to give this up. I really do want to let these things go in me. I really do want to kill off these portions of myself. This entity that we see in the Temperance card helps with that process. A lot of people think of the word temperance in the way that they think of they think of it meaning moderation. They think of it like temperance as in to be moderate in your approach to things, or moderation in your practices, or whatever. That is not how I work with this word. I think of temperance as in to temper, like steel. Like when we take metal and we put it into a forge and heat it super hot, right? That fire element that we were talking about. And then we pull it out and we hammer it and we put it back into the fire and we take it out and we hammer it over and over and over. Doesn't that sound like fun? Don't you want to be the metal in that? Just getting burned alive and hammered over and over again? Wait, is that just life on Earth? Yes. Okay, so... And why the Wheel of Fortune card? Because when we are in the midst of this process, we are completely out of control. We have paid the ticket, we are on the ride, and we are holding on for dear life. That is truly the experience. As we move through this portion of the wheel, things get pretty wild because, as I have said for the last 2 hours, we're watching these natural systems break down, and the bones, the skeletons that are being revealed are quite enlightening. And so some real truths have to be reconciled with, and again, we see parts of ourselves in the world dying off, temporarily or permanently. As the bones of the universe are revealed... Oh, thank you, ResistBot. I will do my political duty here in just a moment. As the bones of the universe are revealed, we have to come to some pretty uncomfortable truths with ourselves. We also begin to realize just how vast some of these systems are. And in that, things can feel hopeless or overwhelming. That's legit. And the Temperance card is here saying, it is. It is 100%. The Wheel of Fortune card is here saying, yes, it is overwhelming. It absolutely is bigger than you. Something that I talk about in my writing on both of these cards is we're not meant to make it through. That's not, the point is that we are broken down. The point is that we are ground up. And that shakes loose the demons. That shakes loose the devils in us. Our shame, our fear, our hopelessness, our insecurities. Those things. And that's the stuff that we feed to Kali at the great feasts in these lands of the dead. That's the stuff that we feed her. And the Temperance card is a representation of the process of grinding that off of ourselves and shedding those things that we desperately hold on to, that we dearly love. I love my fear. I hold on to it so tightly. I love my insecurities. I hold on to them so tightly. And so there is also an element here of don't give this up unless you're actually going to give it up. Terence McKenna gives an incredible lecture on working with Kali, and he talks about working with her power in this way and says, she's here, she's starving, give her that stuff, feed it to her, but don't offer it to her and then take it back. You let it go, and she eats it. Don't take it back. So in the Temperance card, hanging out with these entities, this is this process of hammering away the things that are holding us back from our power, our greatness, being truly of use to society and the people in our lives. If you're having a hard time thinking about that, here are a couple of other Temperance cards that are some of my all-time favorite Temperance cards, including this one from the Swedish Witch Tarot, where it's not even called Temperance anymore, it's the Alchemist. And I think that really gets right to the heart of it. Volcano in the background, even. The bow of the Sagittarius archer is literally a rainbow into the heart of the sun. Great stuff. And then next to it, one of our living treasures, Lon Milo Duquette, really incredible modern Kabbalistic writer for those who enjoy Kabbalah, modern Kabbalah. This is from his deck that is really, really difficult to find, the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. The art quality, like the style of it, definitely is amateurish, but the point definitely gets across. You're not buying it for the technical skill here. You're buying it for the incredible lineup of symbolism that he has included on these cards. He has the I Ching, he has the Enochian tablets, he has Babylonian seals, he has Goetia. I mean, it is like jam-packed with symbolism. But that rainbow energy in there, again, just leaving that for a breadcrumb for you. Okay, nearing the home stretch, you guys. So when we're working with all of these super highfalutin ideas of existential death and all this stuff, right? How do we actually do it? We work with our minor arcana. These are the cards that actually help us get through. There we go. I always point in the wrong direction. There we go. These are the cards. The minor arcana are the day-to-day cards. This is the stuff that we're actually going to be doing in the real world as we're having all of those philosophical ponderings that the major arcana are showing us. Here's the grist of it all. And through Scorpio, it's a pout session. It's a big pout session. Like, that's what we said at the start of class. It's just pout-tastic. It really is about making sure that you're taking time and feeling your feelings and allowing the shadow to come forward, allowing those difficult pieces of you to come forward and say their piece. Being heart-centric and knowing that help and assistance might come from some odd entities, some strange entities, and also giving yourself some room to dream, as long as we don't convince ourselves that the fantasy is the truth, but it is just a fantasy. But it's, a lot of this, like, let me feel my feelings and let me sit with all of my hopes that haven't come true so far. Let me sit with my fears that seem to be running the show. And then when we're moving through Sagittarius, there's our major arcana over there, but the minor arcana, the 8, 9, and 10 of wands, are taking us through this journey of who are all of these people that I have been in this lifetime and to what end. What all are the roles that I'm playing in my life, and how is that contributing to this overarching conversation of What am I here to do? What am I being forged into, or what is being forged out of me? We might think of these pieces of wood as the wood that we are feeding the fire in the forge of temperance. Again, writing on my website for more information on all of that cool stuff. Okay. This is the part where I always go super fast because I take way too long with the other stuff. Briefly and quickly, here are some helpers of a variety of types for you in this season. Utilize these in your rituals, utilize these on your altars if you like, but I also encourage working with these tools in whatever ways make sense for you throughout the season, all the way right up until Yule. Here's a great collection of incenses and scents and plant helpers that are fantastic for this time of year. Dragon's blood, of course, patchouli and champa, musk, opium, oak moss. These are all really fantastic for Scorpio and Sagittarius energies. Foods, I'm always going to encourage eat whatever is in season and locally available. If the farms around you are still popping and you can get out to them, absolutely go out to the farms and go support your local farmers. If you can only get to your local like community garden or pea patch or whatever they call it, like do that. But perfectly appropriate to put candies and sweets and fun stuff like that on the altar. But also like fennel and absinthe and all of that stuff. Mushrooms, whatever type you enjoy. Those can also go on a, don't do drugs, kids, but if you do the good ones. Certainly appropriate. Any mulled ciders, especially anything that we might have started at Mabon season, whether they're ready to be drunk or not, you might charge them for a while on your Samhain altar. Animal helpers that we are working with, any and all of these entities. A lot of these entities connect with the mythic cycles that we're working with various gods and goddesses. Our plant helpers for this time of the year, you know, of course, marigold we're seeing tons of in Dia de los Muertos celebrations, but a lot of these, again, are part of mythic cycles for our deities that we work with, and or they celebrate death work, they celebrate divinatory work, or support divinatory work or death work that we're doing. Fly agaric, certainly one of the more fun and interesting. Don't poison yourself. Don't sue me. Don't die. Okay. Mineral helpers, if you enjoy working with crystals, these are all stones that are assisting us at this time of year. Again, lots of Scorpio stuff here, but Sagittarius energy as well. Rainbow obsidian in particular is really fantastic for Sagittarius energy. Obsidian being stone from volcanoes, glass from volcanoes. But labradorite, also a stone that is really great. That's not labradorite. That is really great for doing divination and ceremonial work as well. And last but not least, our meditations. Actually, before we get to this, I wanted to read the piece from the tarot page in here, and then we'll get to that. The images we encounter in death. Actually, let me pull this up. Why don't I use the resources I have created painstakingly for myself? All right. The images we encounter in the Death, Tower, and Judgment cards strike at the core of most people who see them. The concepts are similarly daunting. In the Death card, we're faced with profound transformation, a literal death of the old state of being. In the Tower, we're faced with the psychological effects of your world being flipped upside down as reality proves everything we know is wrong. In the Judgment card, the horn of truth blows over the heads of the dead, rising out of their graves. What do we make of this? As unlikely as it may seem, these three cards are a reminder of the connectivity between all beings in the universe. Our fear, our greed, the wounds we carry, all keep us separated from each other. But death, i.e. change, reminds us that we are all golden shafts of wheat growing up out of the same ground. And yes, It is going to take our best from us, and we will be forced to adapt if we want to progress. But we will continue to suffer our losses, suffer being abandoned or betrayed, or suffer from our own delusions, projections, and fantasies of persecution if we only see change and chaos as an attack on us personally. The Tower, also called the House of God in some decks, represents the ego death we experience when we remember that we are all emanations from the same source, that all beings experience these forces, and that it's not personal, and that all of these things we have built within a sense of self, they're actually illusions. We may want to lash out or distrust anyone who seems to relieve us from our own responsibility or dissolve our fears in substance. But the Judgment card reveals that our fears around change are unfounded. Yes, parts of us will die as old pieces evolve or fall away. We need to mourn our wounds and the pain that unexpected chaos inflicts on us, forgive our foolishness, and thank the parts of us that have utilized broken coping mechanisms that kept us alive. When we push through fears of losing ourselves, because of course there is no self to lose, we push our imagination and hearts to the limits of the cosmos. We stretch out beyond ourselves, and we remember that we are a part of something more and immortal. All right, so now let me bring us to our meditations. And again, you can utilize these meditations throughout the season, during your rituals, if you choose to do any rituals for Samhain or for the moons, or in whatever ways work for you. Consider the elders in your life. What roles do elders play in your community? What challenges have they faced? And then consider your ancestors and the challenges they faced. And I want to stress that ancestors can be genetic or cultural, whatever. What guidance have they provided for you? In what ways are you becoming a good ancestor? What work are you doing around that? That is the class, my good friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me say this. You freaks! Thank you so much to my patrons. Oh my God. Thank you so much to my patrons, / my enablers. These are the people, so if you got beef with this in the last 2+ hours, these are the people that you need to take into responsibility. You guys, holy shit. Ugh, it's too much. It's too much, and yet it's just the right amount. Thank you so much for your support, especially over this last year. I know that I have all but gone completely silent, and as I said in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I don't want to talk about it too much because it was my process, and I am going through it still, and I needed to go through it. I just hope that for each and every one of us, that when necessity presents itself, that we all have the space and the grace to go through our process, and that we are held by community in the way that I have been held in the last 12 months. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. These motherfuckers right here, I'll tell you what. If you would like to work with me, here's all the stuff. I do tarot readings, I do astrology readings, pagan spirituality, I do magical consultations. In fact, I just scheduled a magical consultation the other day. I also offer tarot mentorships. More information about that in the coming year. You can find me on Patreon, these live classes here on YouTube, Spinning the Wheel podcast, which is sometimes weekly, sometimes not. You can also go to my website and sign up for my extremely irregular newsletter, and I also have a blog on my website and just boatloads of writing. Come hang out with me. Let's do some motherfucking witchcraft, and Thank you so much. I have missed doing this in this last year, and it's really fucking cool to be back. Thanks for sticking it out with me. I know we're way over time, and I don't really care. Happy Samhain. Happy death. And happy 3-day adventure in the underground. Again, make room for chaos, or chaos will make its room. If there are devils to be found on the underworld journey, they surely will come from your own heart. Give it up and feed Kali, and don't take it back. Release these things. Call up the shadow. Give it a big old hug and a kiss, and then feed it to the dark. Feed it to the goddess. Give it to her. Let it go. And then I will see you in 6 to 8 weeks at winter solstice. Bye. Mwah. Blessed be, everybody. Thanks for joining me.